these guys in the
Yeah.
asylums.
So, anyways, they're swapping out animal fats for polyunsaturated fats. What did they basically find?
They found that, I mean, the most critical finding and the one that correlates with all the data we've discussed so far is they found that the greater the effect on lowering cholesterol, the worse the outcome of heart disease was.
People died of heart disease more often the more we lowered their cholesterol.
The more we lowered the cholesterol,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we know from much later research that what polyunsaturated fats lower blood cholesterol because they get oxidized in the liver, and the liver will not secrete
Mm-hmm.
them.
To anthropomorphize the liver, right? The
The
liver
liver's not
knows it
stupid.
shouldn't be exporting these oxidized LDLs.
Right, right. Because part of the liver's job is to try, is to get rid of them. So what did they do with this information? They buried it.
They buried it, literally.
Literally. The paper was not published until this study ended in 1973, I believe. The paper was not published until 1989, 16 years later. Ansel Keys didn't sign the paper. He also didn't sign the final paper of his famed seven country study. One of the concluding sentences of which was, it may be the oxidized lipids that are causing the problem here because our hypothesis didn't pan out because they
Right.
saw, right? He didn't sign that paper. He didn't sign this paper. Um, but by the time that was released in 1989, it was dogma,
Yeah.
right? It was
Yeah.
already part of the dietary
Right. I mean,
guidelines.
this whole saga. I've written about this. Many other people have. There's book length
Yeah,
treatments on it. Like, it's just such a good lesson in the human psychology of science and how, at the end of the day, right? Science is not this,
scientists aren't saints.
right? They aren't saints. They're human beings with career ambitions and all of the same biases that everybody else has.
Exactly. Exactly right.
I want to ask you really quick about some statin stuff to connect some dots before giving us a few minutes to kind of just flesh things
Wrap
out
it
and
up.
get to
Oh,
the
one,
high points I want to reiterate.
yeah, one point we should mention is that the most successful dietary intervention in medicine was something called the Lyon Diet Heart Study. And that was they did a number of things to try and create a healthier diet, right? Some of which have been done in other studies and were not effective. But the one thing he did, which no other study ever did, was reduce the content of linoleic acid in the diet
Hmm.
and increase the content of an omega-3 fat called alpha linolenic acid. Okay. Now, the effect of that we know from later research is to increase the amount of omega-3 fats in LDL and decrease the amount of omega-6 fats in LDL, right? It increases the amount of an omega-3 fat called EPA,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is now an FDA approved treatment called Vascepa to prevent heart disease,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that is, in my view, the proof of concept here that the most successful diet modification for heart disease was lowering linoleic acid and that would have the effect of replacing omega-6 fats in the particles with omega-3 fats,
Right.
which
Right.
for other reasons that are probably way outside the scope of this tend to be less toxic in the body.
Mm-hmm. So we said before how so you've got LDL particles, you've got the LDL receptor. You can take LDL out of the bloodstream via the LDL receptor and put it somewhere else. But then we also learned that you can modify LDL particles, you can oxidize them. At some point, they become oxidized enough that the LDL receptor no longer recognizes them. They're
Right.
recognized by these other scavenger receptors, and that connects into the macrophage overfeeding stuff that we discussed. I want to ask you about statins now with that in mind, because the way statins are supposed to work is they lower your LDL by changing LDL receptor stuff. But if the LDL receptor only recognizes unoxidized LDL and oxidized LDLs are actually the problem, how do we think about statins here and what's going on?
Well, so here's a really interesting tie-in to statins. Joseph Steinberg, who wrote that one of those two papers, or co-wrote one of those two papers that I sent to you, was at the time one of the most influential cardiologists in the country. And this pharmaceutical company, Merck, I'm sure everybody's heard of them, had this product that they were thinking of not selling into the marketplace. It was the first statin. Um, it was the first statin, and he convinced them to put it on the market. Now, if you're Joseph Steinberg and you've just demonstrated that the thing that's causing heart disease is a fundamental part of a fundamental part of the American diet at that point, and B, something that your profession has been promoting since the 1960s, right? It's going to be kind of awkward to come out and say, guys, we blew it, right? But there's a pretty good argument that just lowering the levels of LDL will prevent that oxidation from happening, right? I
Okay.
think that the reason these PCSK9 mutation people have higher levels of heart or lower levels of heart disease is because the LDL doesn't have the opportunity to become oxidized in the bloodstream, and
Hmm.
the FH people have higher levels of heart disease because it does have the
There's more
opportunity to.
chances for that oxidation to happen.
Exactly, exactly. So if you can lower the LDL, it's not an unreasonable thing, again,
Yeah.
to
That you're also going to
say,
lower oxidized LDL.
right, it would off. And additionally, statins, for reasons I've never seen explained coherently, tend to have an antioxidant effect,
Hmm.
right? So it may be what's known as a pleiotropic effect of the drug is why it has
Yeah. Yeah.
an effect of uh I statins and heart disease is definitely another
Hmm.
topic. I would not take
Yeah.
a statin
Well,
myself.